Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. Today we're going to be making the final box in the number treat series, which is the number 7. Each of the boxes have been made the same size overall so that you can use one or more numbers in conjunction with one another. And in addition, I try to use 1/8 of an inch rather than 1/16 where possible, so you can easily scale up or down the size of the boxes. We'll start by making a template, which you will then draw around to create your front and back panel. And the starting cardstock is 4.5 inches by 7.5 inches. Along the short side, score or mark with your pencil from top to bottom at 1.5 inches, 1 7/8, and 3. And on the long side, mark from top to bottom or score from top to bottom at 3, 4.5, and 6. You'll then use the various grid lines that we've created to create your number 7, which is the red line here. Cut around that and use that to draw around on your base cardstock, and you should have 2 pieces which look like this. We're now going to make the side panels, which are going to join the front and back together. On this template here, you can see I've marked the length of each of the sections, and I would recommend you measure the length of each of your sections on your back and front panels to make sure that they're the same. If there is any difference, you will need to adjust the length of your strips and the placement of your score lines accordingly. The opening on this particular box is going to be a 1.5 section at the end here, but you can obviously change where the opening in your box is, and by amending the scoring in the top section C here, you could have the whole of the top opening if you so wished. These boxes are also quite good for using up scraps. So for instance, rather than cutting longer strips and scoring, you might want to cut each section independently. So for instance, this section along here, you might cut as 3 inches plus maybe a 1/2 inch glue tab, and just create your strips separately as you move your way around the box. The construction method on all of the boxes is the same, so if you've watched any of the other videos, you know how we're going to proceed. So once I give you the length of the strips, you might want to make a note of those and then skip the rest of the video. In this particular instance, because this box is for demonstration purposes only, each strip is going to be 2 inches wide, scored at 1/2 and 1.5. That's going to give me a 1/2 inch glue tab, a 1 inch depth of the box, and then a 1/2 inch glue tab. So you can adjust the widths or the depths of your boxes accordingly by adjusting the width of the strips. Strip A, which is the red on the template, that runs down here, across and down to here with a 1/2 inch glue tab. That is 7.25 inches long, scored at 1.5, 4.5, 6, and 6.75. Strip B is the purple section. That's going to run down the bottom half of the box. That is 10 7/8 of an inch long, scored at 1.5, 1 7/8, 5, 6.5, 9 5/8, and 10 3/8. And then finally, strip C is going to run in the orange section and incorporate the opening. That is 10 inches long, scored at 1.5, 1 7/8, 3.5, 5, 8, and 9.5. Once your 3 strips are prepared, we'll start with strip A, which is going to run around in this section here. Fold and burnish along the long score lines, and I'm going to start by manipulating the vertical score lines into the orientation that they're going to be around the box. This first section here is here. This is going to be a mountain fold. That's going to come around like so, and the next is going to be a valley fold. So it's going to run in the opposite direction. And I'm going to work my way around the box with all 3 strips, manipulating the cardstock into the orientation that it will run in when we come to glue the strips into place. Once your strips are prepared, we'll start with strip A. We're going to cut up each of the score lines within the 1/2 inch tab to separate the pieces, which is going to then allow us to stick this around to adhere this to the panel. Now you may at this stage want to take a wedge from the ends of each of these glue tabs, or you may want to wait until you see whether any of the glue tab is going to protrude outside of the panel of the box. I'm going to just take a very slight wedge off of each of these, so I know there's no chance of them sticking beyond the front panel. So once you've created your side glue tabs, this is that glue tab which is going to join A onto B. I'm going to remove this bottom left and right hand square and just take a wedge from the end of the joining tab. In addition, on strip A only, I'm going to add a small finger notch just to make life easier to get into the box, but this is personal preference, so that will be strip A. Strip B, you can treat in exactly the same fashion, cutting into each of the side sections along the score line. Obviously this won't have a finger notch in it, and cut your glue tab in exactly the same way. In relation to strip C, which incorporates the opening, again cut up each of the score lines within the 1/2 inch section. The difference with strip C is I'm going to remove the bottom left and right hand squares as we did previously. However, this 1/2 inch tab here is the tab which sits down inside the opening, and rather than cut that as a wedge, my personal preference is just to round off the corners just to neaten up the look of that tab. Once the box is constructed, we can then ascertain how much we need to cut off this front tab, if any, to enable the lid to slot down nicely into the box. So once your strips are prepared, it is a case of adding glue to your side glue tabs and manipulating the side panels around the outer edge of the box. So you'll do that all the way around. Start that process for strips A and B. So you can see here, if I cut to the end, you can see that some of the tab is hanging out over the top. So I'm just going to go in and just shape that to remove that excess, and then we can continue adding the tabs into place. If you do get any overhang at all, you can go in at the end once it's all dry and just slice off with your scissors or your craft knife anything which is not quite sitting as flush as you would like. When I get to the top, I'm just going to add glue onto the first section. Make sure this section that's got the tab on it is completely out of the way. You don't want to stick that in by mistake. And push that into place. So once the side panel and the front or the back is adhered, you can go around, and where any tabs overlap with one another, just add some glue and just stick those down like so. That just helps the box maintain its shape and also create some rigidity. And then I'm going to use my construction glue. Again, make sure you keep the lid completely out of the way. You don't want to stick that down by mistake. Add glue onto all of the sections all the way around, and then take your second panel, and then that is going to sit over the top, and just use that to bring everything into line and into shape. Once that's dry, close the lid and you can see how much, if anything, you need to trim off the front edge of the lid so that the lid sits in. So I'm just going to trim away like so on both sides. So my lid now sits in like so. Now, I will say that I was a bit dubious as to whether this box would stand up or not. I have put some brads to about up here, and this box does actually stand up. It is more stable than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to have to come up with some way of it standing up. This one does stand up quite easily. So for the final element of the box, I will give you the measurements for the matte layer, and I would recommend that you cut this out of some scrap cardstock to just see that you like the look of it. The starting cardstock is going to be 4 1/4 by 7 1/4, and along the short side mark from top to bottom at 1 1/2 plus a 1/16, 1 7/8, 2 3/4 plus a 1/16, and 3 inches. And on the long side, mark at 3, 4 1/4, and 6. And then you're going to use those lines to join up to make your template for your matte layer like so. So that will give you approximately 1/8 of an inch border around the sides, and that is going to sit on the top like so. So I'll just bring in another one of the boxes so you can see how you can use the numbers in conjunction with one another. But there we have the number 7, the last of our boxes in the number series. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.